Hi, everyone. Thanks a lot for joining us tonight for our session to share how you could create a more energy efficient home, especially as we lead into winter. So imagine with the cold weather that already seems to have hit us, that you may be sitting in a cool house and still have some high energy bills and wanting to find ways to stay warm. So my name's Kelly Heffer. I work in Glenara Council's sustainability team, and I'd like to acknowledge that I'm on the land of the Bunurong, Bunurong and Wurundjeri Wurrung peoples of the Eastern Kulin Nation. We pay respect to their elders, past, present and emerging. So tonight is one step towards our city's ambitious goal to achieve zero net community emissions by 2030. And around half of Glenara's carbon emissions come from the use of electricity and gas in our homes. So we know there's lots of opportunity to reduce emissions as well as create much more comfortable and healthy homes right where we live. And we've banded together with a bunch of other councils to develop a campaign to support residents and businesses to electrify everything. So that, of course, involves installing rooftop solar, but also planning how you switch out to more efficient electric heating, hot water and cooking. So ultimately, we'd like to see more people using clean energy and avoiding unhealthy gas in their homes, and obviously mitigating against future energy price rises as well. So whether you live in Glenara or not, I do encourage you to make use of the support that's on our website. So we've got a simple web address, which is glenara.vic.gov.au/electrify everything. And you can see independent expert guides on efficient electric heat pump technology, induction cooktops and heating. And there's also some recorded webinars that we've had before, and we've prepared a Go Electric plan where essentially you can map out the timing of when it would make sense for you to switch out your heating, hot water, cooking and vehicles based on the age of your appliances and your vehicle. And we've tried to go some way towards helping you navigate the myriad government rebates and support that are now available. And the last thing I'll mention, just from Glenara's point of view, is that I really encourage you to take a look at our Solar Savers program as well, a joint program with other local councils where you can get some independent advice on whether solar is right for you. And then if you like, you can obtain a quote from installers that have been vetted to supply quality and affordable products. So while installing the efficient electric appliances, of course, is important, tonight's session will also talk through the other efficiency measures, to stop heat and energy leaking out of your home, such as draught proofing, insulation and window treatments. So tonight's session, just some of the nuts and bolts, it will be recorded and we'll have that posted on our website. And firstly, we'll have a presentation from Andrew Redaway from Renew, and then plenty of time for audience questions at the end. For those not so familiar with Zoom, you'll see the Q&A function on the bottom right of your screen. You can type in questions as you think of them during the presentation, and then we'll have them answered at the end. And as questions come through, you can feel free to give any questions that you particularly like a thumbs up, and we'll endeavour to answer all questions, and we usually do, but good to see which ones are popular. And if you've got any tech problems or have really useful resources to share that aren't actually a question, then please use the chat function. And we've got Dave from Renew who could assist with any technical issues, but do try to keep the questions that you'd like answered to the Q&A. And there is the ability to raise your hand if you're really in trouble from a technical point of view, and we can reach out from the back end. So to introduce our speaker, we have Andrew Redaway from Renew presenting tonight. Andrew is an energy analyst who's been involved with Renew for 10 years, helping households with independent energy advice. also works for the Australian Energy Market Operator, the Australian Energy Foundation and ENHA, the Australian Solar Installations, and is a certified passive house designer. So with that, I'll hand over to Andrew and we'll get into the presentation. Thank you.
Great, thanks for the nice intro there, Kelly. That's great. So tonight we're looking at energy efficiency and particular to do with winter, because we're coming into that season, and it'll be interesting to see what happens this winter compared to winter 2022, which was energy made it into the news a fair bit last year, and when energy is in the news, that's never a good thing. It's the type of topic that it's best if everything just works in the background. But yeah, with wholesale prices for electricity and gas really spiking up last year, that was partly due to the conflicts overseas, but also local issues such as gas depletion. So some people are saying, well, that's in the past. 2023, we should be sort of back to normal, but others think maybe not so much. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens this winter. All right, so energy usage in the home. So we've got a pie chart here that gives a rough breakdown for Australian homes, like roughly which energy users are the biggest, and heating and cooling are big. So this is across different types of energy, so gas or electricity, and then hot water, and then after that we get fridges, other appliances, etc. And yeah, so this is where we're going to be focusing most of our time in this presentation, is on that heating and cooling and the hot water, because yeah, particularly for winter, you're going to be using a heating, and the Victorian climate actually does use a lot more energy in winter than it does in summer. If you have a heat wave, then a lot of houses do use a lot of energy, like just for that specific day or that few days. But in winter, it's just the continuous grind of month after month of yeah, heaters being used, which really racks up that energy over time. Okay, there we go. Now, reading your electricity bill. This is a good one to start with. Some people are a little confused, and it's not surprising because, yeah, especially here in Victoria, we've got one of the most competitive energy markets in the world, which means that all the different retailers are trying to steal customers off each other. And what's the term? Confusion is profit. So if people don't understand what's going on with their bills, then often that means that they're not on a plan which is as cost effective as it should be. And if you stay on a plan for a long time on like one electricity tariff, one deal with a retailer that sends you bills, then the chances are that you're not going to be on the most competitive tariff, and because they play games to if you're on one of the old tariffs, then they'll keep bumping up the prices over time, and the only way to really get a good deal is to switch, or at least call up your retailer and just ask them to be put on the best possible deal, or you will switch. So anyway, having a look at your bill here. So the account summary is a pretty good overview of what you're doing, what your electricity has been like for that time period. What plan are you on? So that's your detail over here. So you have an example of Flexi Saver time of use. Concession details is important. So if it's always good to check and see if you're eligible for any concessionary rebates or tariffs on your electricity plan. contact details, distributor contact details. So the difference there is the distributor is the company that owns your poles and wires and in your local area. So there's 5 different distributors around Victoria, and so they almost always have the details on the bill. So if you had a tree fall down on the poles and wires in your street, for example, there's no point calling your retailer. It's the distributor you need to call. The retailer is pretty much just doing the billing, the paperwork, and all the finance stuff behind the scenes. So that split occurred back in the 90s when the Victorian electricity system was privatised. Previously, it was all the old State Electricity Commission, the SEC, which is apparently going to be revived in some form or another. I don't think anyone knows exactly what form that's going to be, though. And then item 6 here is the usage comparison and history. So here it's telling us the energy that you're using per day. So that's the kWh there, kilowatt hours, which is a unit of energy, and average cost per day, and a little bit of a chart over the last year as well, which can be useful. So I was just complaining about how confusing it is to compare, different retailers and their plans. So what's the best way to do it? Well, there is actually a good comparison website called Victorian Energy Compare. So that's provided free by the Victorian government. And it's probably a better option than some of the other comparison websites out there, because some of the websites don't include all of your options, because they're a money-making business, and they're only going to show the options, the retailers which are paying them to be included. So yeah, compare.energy.vic.gov.au is a good one to look at, and you can set your criteria, and it'll show you a whole bunch of different offers, different plans that are available to you. And this is just an important one to note. There's this power saving bonus, which is another Victorian government thing. So all electricity account holders can get a free $250. You might think that that's not relevant to you because you already claimed it, like last year or something like that. Well, this is a new one, so it's an additional $250. So I would say just go and try and claim it. If you log into the Victorian Energy Compare, it will prompt you and provide a link for how to do that. It's quite easy. All you need is your electricity bill. Yeah, so make sure you don't miss out on your free money. So thermal performance, keeping the heat in. So in winter, we're talking about heat loss being the issue. So we're putting heat into our homes with our heaters, with sunlight coming through the windows if we're lucky enough to have like a north-facing windows. We also get heat coming into our buildings through cooking and showering, and even just the body heat of people and pets. But that heat it's always trying to escape out of the building. It's trying to go from the high temperature space inside the building out to the low temperature cold outdoor air. So there's a few ways that it escapes. It can just conduct through the walls and the ceiling and the floor. It can move with the air, convection. So as we're losing drafts, air's escaping and taking that heat with it. And yeah, those are the main ones. Also radiation would, it'll just be radiating some heat out from the roof, if for example, up into the cold black night sky. So we're going to talk about insulation in a bit more details and windows, but just for now, windows are a bit of a weak spot in your thermal your thermal performance, your thermal envelope. They can also be helpful if you have that those north-facing windows that allow that winter sun to come into the house. So yes, homes can be rated for energy performance, and that's what this NatHERS rating is, which is used for new homes. The standard now is it has to be at least a 7-star rating. It has to be designed to if you're building a new house or doing a major renovation, then that work has to be modeled in a software tool, and it has to include enough insulation and enough draft sealing, etc., so that it'll only lose a certain amount of heat in winter, and you'll have relatively comfortable indoor temperatures inside the home. So the current standard for new homes, or soon to be coming, is 7-star, and the older standard was 6-star, which, as you can see here, this is an estimate of how many kilowatt hours of energy you would need to heat and cool a house in Melbourne. It's just an example house. I think it was 200 square meters and some examples there. So the standards are improving. So we're improved from 6-star to 7-star, which provides a useful reduction. If you've got a really old home that was built before there were any standards, then it could well be 1-star, 2-star, 3-star, and you can see how much more energy those older homes take to keep them warm in winter and cool in summer. But there are things that you can do to improve them, and we'll be talking about some of those in this presentation. Now, I've just put as another example there the passive house standard. So this is much more exotic. It's not hasn't been taken up in large numbers yet, but yeah, just on that number there, it's a fair bit less, but it's not really apples for apples. So with a passive house standard, for example, it's not just based on the design of the building. There's actually testing as well for the air tightness and the performance of the home. The modeling is a lot more rigorous as well. So even though it looks like here, like a passive house may not be that much better, in fact, it would probably be a lot better. The other thing is that just because a home is designed to perform at 7 stars, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be built that way. The builders could, and their subcontractors could cut some corners. You could have some gaps in your insulation. You could have some large, drafts around plumbing pipes and that sort of thing. So there's theory and there's actual, and they don't always match up. Now, if you've got an existing home and you're looking to get an understanding of how it performs thermally, then, and from an overall energy point of view, there's a thing called the residential efficiency scorecard, and that's where an assessor can come out and visit your home and enter all the details, like measurements and what type of appliances you have and what type of walls and ceilings, all that kind of stuff. And you can get a report, which helps you to identify where are the weak spots in your thermal performance, and what would be the priorities to try and work on that. So there are some moves towards making these types of reports mandatory if you're going to sell or rent a home. That's already the case in the ACT, actually, and it would be great if anyone moving into a new home had this type of information. Are they moving into a lemon of a home that's going to be uncomfortable and cost lots of money to heat and cool? But yeah, we haven't got that far in Victoria yet. Now, insulation. So this is basically like a woolen blanket. It's ideally you have insulation in the ceiling, the walls, the floor, and it's just helping to reduce the amount of heat that's just conducting out through the building fabric and being lost out to the environment. So ceiling would, if you had no insulation at all, then ceiling would be where you'd start. Heat does tend to rise. Excuse me. So yeah, you want to stop that heat from rising up to your ceiling level and conducting out into your roof space. A rule of thumb would be 250 millimeter thick insulation. So that's called R value of 5. So just like an insulation value. Yeah, try and avoid gaps. So if you pay some contractors to put the insulation in, then yeah, if it's possible, get someone to check or ask the workers to take photos up in the roof of all the work they've done, just so you can verify that they haven't, skip the difficult bits like down in the corners at the end where they haven't got much headspace to crawl in, etc. Because yeah, gaps do actually make a big difference in your performance, because heat is trying to find it's trying to escape, and if it can't get through somewhere, then it's going to bypass it and go through the gap. Wall insulation is it can be more difficult to install in a roof. More difficult than installing ceiling insulation in a roof space, because the walls are, they're sealed up. You've probably got plasterboard on the inside and some type of cladding like weatherboard or bricks on the outside. So how do you get that insulation in? There are some ways to do it. For example, there are companies that can create small holes in the wall and then blow in like little tufts of fiberglass and to blow it in, and all fills up those wall cavities, and that can work fairly well. And then obviously that they repair the holes afterwards. So I've had that done in some walls in my own home, and it really did make a difference. But yeah, it's always a matter of weighing up the costs. So what you'd ideally go for there might be an R value of 2.5. Floor insulation, so that's especially if you've got timber floorboards and you've got cold breezes blowing in under your home, then yeah, insulating under the floor can provide a fair bit of benefit. Now, sometimes people will ask, well, if insulation is good, then why don't we just go crazy and do really, really thick insulation? Well, yes, that is going to improve your thermal performance. But if you've got some insulation already, then if you double that insulation, you're going to halve the amount of heat which is lost through that part of your building. So yeah, that's good. But if it's already small, if your heat loss in somewhere is already small, then halving a number which is already small isn't going to make that much difference, especially if you've got another source of heat loss which is much bigger, so windows, for example. So yeah, it can be a balancing act. So windows, here's a nice thermal image of a home. So the red and purple areas have a very low temperature, and the infrared camera is picking that up. So this is showing that heat is really escaping out of this house through the windows. So what can we do? One option is thick curtains. So this is a traditional option, and we're also going to talk about pelmets in a later slide as well, which work together with the curtains to help stop that heat and going out through your windows. Internal blinds can do a good job. If it's just, you know, a really thin blind, like a Roman blind or a Venetian, that's probably not going to do much to you know, keep the heat in. One type of blind that is or can be pretty good is a honeycomb or a cellular blind, because they sort of create air pockets, and you can even get like double pleated or triple pleated blinds that have multiple air pockets in them. So yeah, the blind opens and closes, and when it's closed, yeah, that can insulate the window pretty well. You want that to fit into the window frame fairly tightly so that air can't just sort of bypass it. The most comprehensive solution would be good double glazed windows. So that means instead of a single pane of glass, you've got 2 panes of glass with a air gap in between, or it may even be a fancy argon or some other gas rather than just normal air in between. And so that provides like an insulating layer inside the window. And then you've got the frames that can be a weak spot as well. So you could have a good double glazed, you know, window pane of glass, but then if you just got a plain aluminium frame around it, aluminium or steel as well, they conduct heat really well. So the weak spot now may be the frame itself. So you've got heat conducting out through the aluminium or steel and radiating out in down beside the house. So I was just at a friend's house the other night, and she had condensation on her metal window frames. You could run your finger down, and yeah, you'd have water on your finger. So that's a clear example of that heat being lost out. So yeah, double glazing with good frames. Yeah, it's an expensive thing to do, and so you pretty much no one would ever do it if they have windows that are fine. The only time people would usually do it is if the windows are going to be replaced anyway. So maybe the windows are too old, they're falling apart, or you're doing a major renovation, for example, or building a new home. Okay, so a pelmet is, okay, so the first picture here on the top left it's just got a simple curtain, right? Just hanging in front of the window. So you've got this airspace in between the curtain and the window pane, the glass. That airspace gets cold because it's losing its heat conducting out through the glass. The cold air drops down and warm air comes down behind it because warmer air is less dense. That's how hot air balloons rise, right? So the warm air gets sucked in behind, and you end up with this circulation effect. You've created an air cooler, which is cooling down your house. So how do you prevent that? Well, so a pelmet is just like some kind of board, something to go on top of that curtain to stop that air circulating in. And there's a few examples here on the other pictures. So yeah, you could have it with a blind, a roller blind. You can have pelmets like built-in board like in the ceiling. So there's different ways you can do it, but yeah, they are very effective. They're not just an old-fashioned styling choice. They actually are functional as well. So you also ideally want the sides to have some sort of cover there. So if you've got thick curtains that go up against the wall, that's fine. That does what you want. And at the bottom, if the curtains go down to the floor, then that's also going to help to stop that air circulation effect. Okay, what about some cheaper, more temporary options? Well, bubble wrap, just that lightweight packaging that parcels get delivered in. So you can stick that up onto glass, and it acts a bit like double glazing, because each of those bubbles is a little air pocket, which is going to help to provide an insulating layer. So, yep, that's one cheap option. You can also make DIY pelmets, and in Renew magazine we've had some articles of how you can do that. Okay, now drafts, air drafts. So with the picture here, lots of examples of places where that warm air that you've spent money to heat up with your heater can escape and find its way out through all these little cracks out and be lost out to the environment. So this is a good option for do-it-yourself efforts. There's a whole bunch of different products, from little tubes of squishy stuff that you can put into cracks between floorboards or under skirting boards, and there are seals that are specially designed for doors and windows. There are covers that go on top of your exhaust fan with like flaps in them, so the exhaust fan, when you turn it on, the air can go out, but the rest of the time that it falls shut. So all sorts of products that can be used. Door snakes, just a temporary lightweight sausage thing that you can put up against the bottom of the door to prevent air from going under the gaps under your door. So yeah, heaps of options there, and it can make a big difference. So sometimes people worry that if they seal up their building too tight, then is that going to cause problems? If you take it to the extreme, if your house is perfectly airtight like a submarine or something, then surely that can't be healthy. Well, yes, if you did manage to seal it up perfectly, then that might be true. But to be honest, if you've got an old house, the amount of gaps and cracks, no matter how much sort of DIY work you do, you're still going to have enough leakage, uncontrolled ventilation going on to not come up across these issues. If you were building a new house and it was being done really tight, then yes, you could have that issue, which is why those homes need to have some special ventilation built in, which actually can be really effective and have a whole bunch of different benefits. Now, one thing that it is good to be careful of, though, if you're sealing up your building, is if you are using gas appliances, like especially if you still have any gas heaters, like those units, like a wall unit that might be in your living room, actually burning gas indoors with no flue. So a flue is like a chimney. You're burning gas, it's creating exhaust, like the exhaust out of your car exhaust pipe or something. So if that gas exhaust is just going into your room, then yeah, you really do need to have good you need to have good ventilation. And if your only ventilation you have is all of your leaks and cracks, then yeah, you do have to be a bit careful sealing them all up. But if you are doing as Kelly was mentioning and going all electric, then that's one issue that you can avoid. Okay, one other aspect of thermal performance of a house is thermal mass. So things like concrete and bricks, yes, they're heavy, they weigh a lot, but another thing they do is they can absorb quite a lot of heat. So for example, if you have a concrete slab, in your living room and you've got some north facing windows. It's a relatively sunny winter day and you've got the winter sunlight streaming down onto that concrete slab, then the slab's going to warm up and it's going to absorb some of that heat and it'll still be releasing some of that heat through the night. So that can be a really good feature. And the same thing with brick walls, or even if you're just running heating during the day, then if you have an internal masonry wall, like a brick wall, then yeah, that can warm up and release that heat back again. Now, where people get a bit confused sometimes is they think, oh yes, I've got a double brick house. I've got the external walls, lots of brick. So that's good insulation. Well, actually, it's not insulation. It can absorb heat, but it's not really stopping that heat from being lost. So yeah, if it's winter, it's cold winter, and you've got say a south-facing wall, yeah, it's going to be radiating heat out. So yeah, some sort of insulation is what you want, a higher priority than thermal mass. So if it was double brick, for example, that same solution I mentioned of forcing in those little tufts of fiberglass insulation, that can be done. All right, let's talk about heating appliances. So there's a bunch of different types that you're probably familiar with. There's reverse cycle air conditioners on the left here. So that's the indoor unit. There's also an outdoor unit, which is connected with a pipe if it's a split system air conditioner. That's actually the most efficient and most economic form of heating at the moment. I'll come back to that in some more detail. The next example here is a gas heater, and it's a portable type. Not so common in Victoria, but there are some around. And this is an example of a heater which it doesn't have a flue. It doesn't have like a chimney pipe. So when you burn that gas, that methane, then yeah, the combustion gases go into the room. So yes, you need to have some kind of ventilation, whether that's opening a window or just heaps of cracks and leaks, then yeah, either one can work. Now, resistive electric, so these ones are using electricity and just really simple, just like your toaster or your kettle. It's just taking electricity and heating up like wires and things. So it's turning electric energy into heat energy, just 1 for 1. 100% efficient. Gee, that sounds pretty good, doesn't it? Well, if we go back to our reverse cycle air conditioner here, that can be 400% to 600% efficient. Yeah. And this slide is just showing that comparison. So because of that efficiency, so this is the costs to run a ducted gas heater compared to a split system reverse cycle air conditioner. Once you factor in not only the cost of the energy through the meter, well, like the electricity meter or the gas meter, but also the efficiency of those appliances. So it costs many more times as much cost to run that gas heater. Okay, so I've just said something can be 400% or 600% efficient, and I bet some of you are wondering how I've managed to violate the laws of physics and thermodynamics and create something from nothing. Well, the good news is I actually haven't. So yeah, so if you've got a toaster, it's just converting your electrical energy into heat energy, or a simple radiator heater or any of those simple electric heaters. An air conditioner, works differently. It's using electricity, yeah, but all the electricity has to do is to turn the motor inside the outdoor unit here. So it's just running the machinery. And then what that machinery is doing is it's extracting heat from the air down the side of your house, for example. So the air that's been sucked into this fan unit, heat gets extracted and you get colder air blowing out. So if it's winter and you're running this unit for heating with the heat button, then if you go down and stand in front of that outdoor unit, you'll notice that the air that it's blowing out is actually colder than the rest of the air down the side of your house. And that's why it's extracting heat out of that air. And where does that heat go? Well, it goes through the pipes that connect the two units and gets concentrated and sent out into your home. So it's actually moving heat. It's moving heat from outside your house to inside your house. And that's why you can, get 4 or 6 units of heat energy for each 1 unit of electrical energy that is drawing through the electric cables. All right, so reverse cycle air cons. There's a lot of options out there. Sizing is one thing. So the smallest units out there may be good for a bedroom. If you've got a big living area, there are some websites with calculators. So one's called Fair Air. That's FAIRAIR. If you do an internet search, you'll find that pretty easy. The Fair Air calculator. They don't have to be that drafty. Like you do always have some air movement when you're using a air conditioner for heating, but if you've got it on a low fan speed, then you don't have to feel like it's going to create lots of drafts in the home. So tips, high star rating. So, the star rating stickers, I'll be showing you one later on in the presentation. So with the small air conditioner units, you can get up to 7 stars. With the bigger ones, they're not quite as efficient. So maybe 5 stars is more what you should be aiming for. We're talking about split system air conditioners with an indoor unit and an outdoor. A ducted system means it's got an outdoor unit with a big fan, which warms up the air. It's warming up some air, and then it's blowing that air through ducts, like that are going through your roof space or under your floors. Ducts. It's effective, but they do use a lot of energy compared to a normal split system. So try and avoid the ducted systems if you can. And low global warming potential. So what that's referring to there is like a fridge, a air conditioner, it has some fluid that's going through the pipes, which is called a refrigerant. So it goes through one way as a liquid and then it comes back as a gas. So it's like evaporating and condensing as it goes around in between that indoor unit and outdoor unit. So that refrigerant gas, some of them, most of them are sort of chemical gases. It's only a small amount of it, but unfortunately, if you had a leak in your system, I don't know, maybe someone was driving their car past your outdoor unit and they knocked it over and the copper pipe split open, then that gas would go up in the atmosphere where it actually is it's fairly potent in terms of being a greenhouse gas. So ideally you'd go for the ones which are a bit nicer for the climate. Now, all ethical air conditioner installers, when they come and decommission an old one, they're not just going to allow it to escape in the atmosphere. They're actually required by law to suck out those gases and treat them responsibly. But accidents do happen. occasionally these refrigerants do escape. So some have a lower, some are a bit more environmentally friendly than others. So R32, I think, is the currently used refrigerant, commonly used in split system aircons, which is probably the best at the moment. Okay, just a couple of general tips about heating. Fairly simple one. Don't heat the whole house if you don't need to. If everyone's just in one room, then maybe you can just only heat that one room, for example. If you have a ducted heating system, so either gas or electricity, that can be a bit harder to achieve. So with a ducted system, you're blowing air into the rooms, right? So then the air has to go somewhere. So they have an air return, which is sucking air out of the house again to go back to the heating unit. But how does the air get back to that central thing? Like often it's built into like a cupboard in the hallway or something. So to work effectively, you need to have doors open in the house, which people often don't do, like especially with bedrooms and things. They've got the doors closed. So you've got this vent. Say it's a typical gas ducted heating system. You have a vent in the floor, probably near the window. It's blowing your hot air into the bedroom. The door's closed. So where's the air going to go? Okay, some will escape under the crack in the door and make its way back to the return system in the hallway, but some of it is going to escape out through the cracks in the window and your other cracks and leaks in your home. So in a situation like that, your ducted heating system is supercharging all of those leaks and cracks and increasing the amount of heat that you're losing out of your house. So that's one of the reasons why ducted systems have some issues. In bathrooms, probably the best, most simple, common, easily installed option is one of these overhead heat lamps, like a 5-in-1 system, they're sometimes called. You might have a light, heat lamp and an extractor fan, like all in one unit. So yeah, the heat that they provide is just like a resistive electric heater, which I was saying was not such a good option. And in general, that's right. But in a bathroom, people usually aren't spending that much time in the bathrooms compared to other parts of the house. So yeah, just something relatively economic and easy to install is, economic to install is probably a reasonable option. So the previous page talked about only heating the rooms that you need to heat. Well, we can take that further, and instead of heating the whole room, maybe we heat the person in the room more directly. So this can be especially effective if you do have a very leaky, thermally inefficient home. Then trying to heat the room, you might be having a hard time because you're putting heat into the room and it's pretty quickly like escaping. So in those cases, then things like electric throw rugs or a heated floor pad, radiant, just a simple radiant panel or a fan heater that's close to the person. Warmer clothing, of course, that's a solution that goes back for tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of years. And yeah, the one I added in here was the heated mouse mat. So yeah, I find that my mouse hand tends to get a bit cold if I'm doing office work all day. So there's one which has a little cover over it that your mouse goes in, and it has a tiny little heater with a USB plug into your computer. So there's lots of things out there, other traditional options like hot water bottles. All right, we've got a couple of slides about hot water. Now, there would be more slides on hot water in other presentations, like the ones about going all electric at home. And Glen Ira Council has done one of those presentations not long ago, and I think is a resource that's available on their website. So if you're looking for something more in depth, then you can have a look there. Or also Renew has plenty of resources as well. Okay, so starting with the simple, easy solutions. Well, if you use less hot water, then that means you're not going to use so much energy to heat up the water. So yeah, it saves water from our reservoirs, and it also saves energy. So if you can use less hot water, then yeah, that's great. So shorter showers is an example. During the drought, I think the recommendations were 4 minutes, 4-minute showers. I think 5-minute showers is a general kind of recommendation. So yeah, that's one option. Shower heads that save water, so like low flow shower heads. What they tend to do is aerate the water, so it still feels like a satisfying shower, even though it's not using quite as much water. And then aerators on taps, similar. And insulating hot water pipes. So we have an example in this picture over there. So pipe lagging. So it's just a rubbery, foamy type of product that can be snapped over a hot water pipe. So that helps reduce the amount of heat that's being lost through out of those pipes. So yeah, look, if you think about it, like if you compare two identical families, family A has their showers are twice as long and their flow rate is twice as high. So they're going to be using 4 times as much hot water as family B. So 4 times as much energy to heat that water. So yeah, these things can add up. And yeah, a similar slide to what we had last time. And it shows pretty much the same picture. If you're going with a gas water heater compared to an efficient electric water heater, the gas option is going to use a lot more energy, and it's going to be more expensive to run as well. Okay, so what is an efficient water heater? So the type that we generally recommend for average suburban household type thing these days would be a heat pump hot water system. So it's using that heat pump technology, which is exactly the same as I was explaining for the reverse cycle split system air conditioners. But so if we have a look at this picture down the bottom there, it's got that unit beside the water tank, which looks almost exactly the same as the outdoor unit on a split system air conditioner, because it's doing the same thing. It's sucking in air down the side of your house, extracting heat out of that air and putting that heat this time into the hot water in the hot water tank. So that's how it's heating the water. The picture at the top is doing the same thing, but that fan unit, that heat pump unit, it's integrated into the top of that tank. So yeah, there's different options around. Pretty much common sense. Use a reputable installer. Some cheaper brands can be noisy and have reliability concerns. Coefficient of performance that's like that ratio, that 400%, 600% ratio I was talking about before. So if the coefficient of performance is 5, then that means it's 500% efficient. For each 1 unit of electrical energy the unit is drawing, it's going to put 5 units of heat into your hot water tank. Now, speaking of the refrigerant gas again, so that's the gas going through the pipes inside the system. With heat pumps, the best ones use carbon dioxide, CO2, as that refrigerant gas. Now, CO2 has a bit of a bad reputation as a greenhouse gas, which it is, but it's actually nowhere near as much of a bad greenhouse gas as those other ones like the R32 or the R410A or whatever. So it's good from that point of view, and it's also good because it needs to use higher pressures in the system. So the system has to be designed a bit tougher, a bit more high tech, but the heat pumps that use that technology actually work really well. They perform well even in really cold conditions. So even if you're up in the Dandenongs or even in the snowfields, etc., these CO2 heat pumps have been proven to work pretty well. And all of the intel that we've picked up from users on noise and reliability is that, yeah, these units perform really well. And there's a few manufacturers that use CO2-based heat pumps for hot water. They do tend to be on the more sort of premium, expensive end of the spectrum. But if you're looking for long-term, confidence in how they're going to perform, then that's not a bad way to go. All right, now we've just got a couple of slides about other stuff. And despite the teaser there on solar panels, the other stuff does not include solar panels. But don't worry, because I think Kelly mentioned that there's a webinar coming up on solar and batteries not too far in the future, which I think we'll mention at the end. Appliances. Okay, so let's say fridges. If you've got an old fridge, so the door seal may not be performing as well as it should. So you can actually have some cold air leaking out of your fridge in between the body and the door. So you could go around with like a thin bit of paper, like a Post-it note or something, and see if you can slip that in between the door and the body and in any part around the door. So that's one way they can be inefficient, old fridges. So new fridges are actually designed a lot more efficient. And that's one of the benefits of this these energy rating requirements. So the picture here is a star rating label. So this is showing it's got 6 stars on the bottom, and then it's got another 2 stars on the top for a total of 8 stars. So that's pretty good. Be aware that these standards have been improved over time. They've been made stricter. So if you've got one fridge which still has a sticker on it, and you bought this fridge in 1990 and it's a 5-star unit, and you're having a look at a fridge in your retail shop today, which has 5 stars on it, the one being sold today, even though they've got the same star rating, in order to get that 5-star rating today, it has to perform way better than what the fridge, a 5-star fridge, would have had to in 1990 or something. So yeah, be aware of that. So new fridges, yep, they tend to be more efficient. It's good to keep them away from heat. So yeah, try not to have your fridge right next to your heater, for example. And another source of heat, this is more of an issue in summer rather than winter, but if you've got that old fridge which you put in the garage or the carport or something as a beer fridge, if the garage is getting really hot, that fridge could be using actually quite a lot of electricity, because it's probably old, the seals are gone, and it's in a really hot location. So yeah, that beer fridge could be costing you a fair bit. Pools can use a lot of energy as well, like home swimming pools, and that's because of the pump. So you typically have a pump that's sending water through filters and stuff, and they can be running for many hours a day. So the more efficient pumps have variable speed motors rather than just single speed. And yeah, the motors also have to work harder if they're trying to push water through, thin pipes with lots of bends in them. That makes it hard. So the motor has to work harder and use more energy. So yeah, that's another thing to consider. And standby power. So that's what that means is, okay, you've turned off your coffee machine, for example. You've turned it off at the unit, but it's still plugged into the wall, and the power point of the wall still has a switch on. Some coffee machines were notorious for they keep something warm like all the time, even when you turn it off. So that's an example of standby power. So it's consuming some energy like all the time. Yeah, so that can apply with all sorts of things like TVs. Newer TVs are better than they used to be, but yeah, office equipment, all sorts of gadgets have some standby power. So there are switches you can use that turn them off at the wall rather than just on the controls of the unit itself. Okay, now here's something that you can probably do yourself very easily. You don't have to go out and spend any money. You don't even have to do any effort to embark on some DIY project. All you have to do is have a look at the button on your air conditioner's remote control. Assuming you have a split system air conditioner somewhere, most homes do these days, probably in the living room, but a lot of people have only ever thought of using it for cooling instead of heating. So yeah, just have a look and see if it does have a heating function. Most of them do. Some don't, unfortunately, that they're only able to run in cooling mode instead of heating mode. But if it does have that heating function, what you could do is try using that for heat. At those times of day when everyone's in that living area, and you don't need to run your whole house heating system if you have one. Yeah, so you could try using that for some of your heating, and then in a couple of months' time, you can have a look at your bills. Okay, it's using electricity, so your electricity bill would go up a bit. If your alternative was gas, your gas bill should come down a lot. So it'll be interesting to see that comparison. Or if your alternative heating source was like a simple electric heater, then your electricity bill should actually go down, because that split system air conditioner should be a lot more efficient at producing heat. So the proviso there is if it's a relatively modern one. If it's a really old one, or if it's one of those square box type that like goes through a window or through a hole in the wall or something, then you probably wouldn't try it. But yeah, otherwise I'd say give it a go. Now, here's a whole bunch of useful resources. I'm not going to try and read through everything on this screen, but yeah, Solar Victoria runs the Solar Homes program. So that's part of the state government, effectively. Victorian Energy Upgrades program. So there are some rebates available for a whole bunch of products. I've mentioned some of these already. Sustainability Victoria has resources as well. Your Home has a wealth of information. And yeah, in a couple of months, Renew is going to be launching a website called the Getting Off Gas Toolkit. And of course, we have the Glen Ira Council resources that Kelly mentioned. Okay. That's it for my presentation. I see we've had quite a few questions coming through in the Q&A there, Kelly.
Thanks a lot, Andrew. That was really terrific. And now we have that really useful tip for the person who has everything. We can get them a heated mouse pad. I never knew such a thing existed. The number one tip from the night. Lots of great questions. I'll start with one in particular that's been upvoted, and I think we can get through all of them. So can hydronic gas heating be converted to electric? Is it possible to sort of, save some of the hardware and switch out the fuel source?
That's a good question. I kind of suspected someone was going to ask this. Oh, hang on. Have I just stuffed up the share screen now? It's okay.
That's okay. It's a placeholder screen. Yeah.
We can get it back. So I think I have a backup slide here that talks about the hydronic heating. Is the sharing working at the moment?
Yep, that's coming through just fine.
Great. Yep. So the simple answer is yes, it is possible, but it may be difficult. So hydronic heating it's a bit of a niche heating product in Australia. So that's where you have either radiator panels like we have in the pictures here, or perhaps you have pipes going through your floor, and you have hot water running through, which releases that heat out of the radiator or up through the floor. So relatively expensive to purchase and install, and often quite expensive to run as well. And in Victoria, it's almost always gas that's being burned like in a boiler, in a hot water unit outside the home to heat up that water which is going through those pipes. So the question was, if you have that, can you convert that over so it's not burning gas? Instead, you've got a heat pump unit, sort of like the hot water systems that I was presenting in that hot water section. So it is possible, but it can be complicated. So there's lots of different types of hydronic systems out there. They can have different temperatures of the water which is flowing through, different flow rates, like how fast that volume of water is flowing through. Some of them use like normal tap water. Some have like special water with like antifreeze, sorry, not antifreeze, anti-rust liquid in it. So you need to find someone who really knows what they're doing to do that conversion. And yeah, from all the accounts that I've come across, it's hard to find a tradie who really does that sort of thing. So you might have to do a bit of legwork. One way to do it is to speak to the companies that sell the hydronic units themselves, and yeah, ask for recommendations of companies that can do it. One issue often is that the heat pump unit may be putting out water at that's not quite as hot as what the gas boiler was putting out. So your radiators might not be putting out as much heat. So you might need to increase the size of your radiators if you go for that system. So yeah, possible, but yeah, you may need to do some legwork.
Thanks for that. And a related question about hydronic heating, how does it compare on the efficiency scale? So if you wanted to make any further remarks about that compared to other technology.
Heat pump hydronic, or?
Well, I think if you're recommending it, like you've said in your presentation, you'd want people to go heat pump hydronic, rather than gas. Yeah,
that's right. So yeah, if you've got a hydronic system which is using water that's heated by a heat pump, so it's running off electricity, but you've got that coefficient of performance, which means it's more than 100% efficient, then that's going to be more efficient than like simple electric heaters in your home, but from the specs that I've seen on the units I've had a look at, it's not as efficient as just your standard split system reverse cycle air conditioner. So if you want maximum efficiency, then yeah, split system reverse cycle aircon. If you want ease of installation, easy to find someone to do the job, then yep, split system reverse cycle aircon. If you want something that does cooling in your summer heat wave as well as heating through winter, split system reverse cycle aircon. So there's a lot going for it. Yeah, but hydronic heating does have a quality of heat that a lot of people like, because there's no air movement at all. Yeah.
There's someone here who has an old floor ducted gas heating system. Can they update the system to an electric system using the same ducts? Usually
not. I'm not an expert on ducting, but from what I've been told, usually you need larger ducts for a reverse cycle aircon system than you would for a gas ducted heater. But on the other hand, I do know there have been at least a few people who've done it successfully. So never say never, but it may be difficult and may not be possible.
Okay, thanks. And there's a question, are ducts an issue regardless of floor, roof or walls? So I think that's referring to heat loss from ducts where where you don't really want them or they're not in use.
Right, yeah. So usually the ducts, so they're going from a centralized heater, usually down the side of the house somewhere, and they're going in like and then branching out into smaller ducts out to multiple rooms. So usually they're either going through the roof space just above the ceiling, or they're going under the house just below the floor. So if you're comparing those two options, roof space or floor, probably doesn't matter that much from an efficiency point of view, but both of those are uninsulated, unconditioned spaces. So if we're talking winter, then you know, it could be 5 degrees or something in the roof space. It could be a similar temperature under your floorboards as well. So yeah, so you've got ducts. They usually do have some insulation in the walls, but it's pretty thin insulation. So you're blowing in hot air into the duct, and then as the air travels down the duct, it's losing some heat, like conducting out through the duct wall. So by the time it makes it into a room, it's not as hot as it was at the start. I'm not sure if that answers the question, but hopefully it does.
Thank you. They can ask a supplementary question if you need some refinement. And to zoom out a bit, so what steps would you suggest someone take to get a whole of house view as to how they could make their house more efficient, environmentally friendly and comfortable, that takes into account the information that you've presented tonight?
Yeah, that's a good question. If they were interested in getting a energy efficiency assessment done, then that residential scorecard would be a good option. So yeah, probably the best option is just internet searches to find a scorecard assessor, or there's also an organization called ABSA. What are they? Australian Building something assessing. So yeah, if you contact them, they've got a list of energy assessor people, etc. So that's one option. Otherwise, well, the low-hanging fruit usually is draft sealing. So I'd have a look at that. Window treatments, ceiling insulation. If you're physically agile and capable enough to pop your head up through the ceiling manhole and have a look at what's going on in your ceiling. Have you got nice thick insulation like this, or you got none, or just a few bits of loose stuff blowing around on the plasterboard on the ceiling? So yeah, but there's a few things to sort of get started with, I guess. And the other option is you can get advice from other people, like internet forums. So a couple that are worthwhile mentioning would be, there's one on Facebook called My Efficient Electric Home, and there's one on a forum called Whirlpool discussion forums. So if you do some searching around there, you'll probably find stuff. And the Renew magazines have a wealth of information too.
Thank you for that. And the residential efficiency scorecard assessors are accredited by the Victorian government, so you can Google that, or we do have a link through on that Electrify page that I sent. Right. But if you Google, Victorian government accredited scorecard assessors, then you can have confidence that it's not just anyone coming to your house and taking a look around. And the My Efficient Electric Home Facebook page was the very first link, helpfully shared in the chat by Tim, which is an absolute wealth of information. And no doubt there will be people who've talked about assessors and that assessment process before, so you could search by past conversations on there. And to change tack a little, what advice would you give renters who have a landlord who doesn't want to invest in improving the house?
Yeah, that's a pretty common situation, unfortunately. Draft ceiling, again, there's DIY products that are, so cheap that some simple little foam strips and things for windows and doors, that would probably be worthwhile doing. Quite a few of the options that we mentioned through the presentation are actually doable by renters. So in terms of window coverings, the bubble wrap is perfect. That's removable. Other options, like you might be able to find some cheap curtains from like secondhand shops, that sort of thing. You might be able to find a way to put up your own curtains and stuff like that. Personal heating is perfect for renters. So even if the home is performs terribly from a thermal point of view, then at least you can keep yourself warm with those throw rugs and foot mats and those types of things. So yeah, there actually are quite a few things renters can do. For hot water, low flow shower heads, they're often easy to install, and again, removable. So yeah.
Thank you for that. And Environment Victoria did some really useful work pulling together resources for renters, including some template letters to try to help renters make the case to their landlord and agents. I've just put the link in the chat, and some of the rental laws have changed in recent years. So you can be letting your landlord know that they need to be providing efficient heating. That's right.
It's very overdue, but
yes, and more to be done.
There's starting to be a bit more sensible provisions for landlords. Yeah.
And on that same Electrify website, on our Glenara website that I've been sharing, there's a energy hacks for renters webinar, which has got a huge amount of information in it if you wanted to watch that. So there's a question: if someone was looking to switch distributor, how would they, what would they look for on the bill? And I think they actually mean retailer, because we're all pretty stuck with our distributor, aren't we? Because they're geographically based. So I know you shared the Energy Compare tool is really the most useful way to do that, because it's hard to compare. You're not always comparing apples with apples if you're just looking at a particular tariff, because it can be a bit complex. But is there any further remark you would make about that for what someone should look for on their bill?
Yeah, right. So yeah, if you are comparing plans, then yeah, that comparison website is probably the best. But apart from that, when you're looking at your bill, I'm wondering if it's worthwhile going back up to that slide again, probably. One of the big things is going to be how much energy you're using per day. So that's what we've got here. So 13.7 kilowatt hours per day is how much electricity is being used. Yeah, how much energy you're using in the electricity. So yep, 13.7 is a pretty common sort of number for a Victorian household, but there's big variation. Like there are some households only use 5. Some I've seen some with like 60 or 80. It's just, there's just so much diversity out there with the sorts of appliances and stuff that people use. Everything to, you know, pottery kilns and massive IT sort of cryptocurrency mining rigs, and you know, there's so much out there. And so that's one. And then from a cost point of view, there's going to be, well, this is how much it's going to cost per day, but your actual tariff, unfortunately, this example here isn't showing the, yeah, it says see over for details. So on the next page of your bill, it'll say how many cents you're being charged per kilowatt hour of energy, of electrical energy. So you could be on a flat tariff, which means, yeah, doesn't matter what time of day you're importing electricity from the grid, it's all just going to be charged at 27 cents or 30 cents or whatever it is per kilowatt hour. You could be on a time of use tariff, which means that if you're using electricity at say 10 o'clock in the morning, you might only be paying 20 cents per kilowatt hour. But then if you're using electricity at 8 o'clock at night during peak time, then you might be charged 35, for example. So that's something to be aware of. And if, like most households do, have that evening peak of when they're using electricity for cooking and heating and all sorts of stuff. So yeah, if you think you do have a very big peak in the evening, then it might be good to try and find a flat tariff rather than time of use. And another one to look at is the daily supply charge. So that'll be something like, say, $1 per day, something like that. But it can vary a fair bit, and that's what you're paying per day, regardless of how much electricity you're using that day. So especially if you're someone who only uses a very small amount of electricity, like relatively, then going for a low daily supply charge can be a good option.
Thanks for that. So someone with a continuous gas hot water service, would an electricity heat pump hot water service be more cost effective and efficient for a one-person household? So you did make the point in your presentation that the answer is yes, but for a very small user, like a small household, would you say anything different there?
Yep. That's, we've had that question before, as you can see. Yeah, so this is one of the supplementary slides. So yes, that's right. If you're, say, single person household, you're only one shower per day, short shower, like 5 minutes, you've got a low flow shower head, then you're really not going to be using much hot water. Heat pump hot water systems, they do cost a fair bit to install. So like economically, it might take you a very, very long time to you know, pay for the cost of that heat pump hot water system just with the savings of energy like ongoing for heating your water, if you're only using a really small amount of energy for hot water anyway. So if that's the case, then from an economic point of view, then yeah, just a continuous gas, instantaneous gas hot water system might be a more economically logical option. And just because we're talking about it, that's actually what this picture is here, is a continuous flow hot water system, an instantaneous gas hot water system. So there's no tank. You've got a gas pipe coming in, you've got a cold water coming in, you've got gas burning, making heat, and it's heating up that water as it flows through, and you've got hot water coming out. So yeah, out of the different gas systems, this one has some benefits. Yeah, and if you are in that situation of very low hot water use, then economically this may be a better option for you. But it would mean that you can't get off gas totally.
Thank you. A couple of window questions. Is retrofitting windows with double glazing worth the cost for the energy efficiency increase? And a second question, just so we can get through as many as we can, hopefully, does window tinting help in winter?
Good questions. Yeah, so retrofitting double glazing, that could mean two different things. So one option is totally taking out your old windows, including all the frames, yeah, taking them out and putting in brand new whole windows. So that generally would not be cost effective if unless you were taking out the old windows anyway. So the other thing that you might be talking about is keeping the old windows, the old single pane windows, and finding a way to add in a second pane of glass or plastic. And that actually can be quite cost effective. And there's a few solutions on the market for how to do that. There are options where you can get, like, say you had white painted timber windows, you can get like panes made up of plastic, like to the right size with a white plastic border on them that can be installed in. So you effectively end up with a sort of double glazing. There's even ones where you attach up like a sheet, or almost like cling wrap, glad wrap, and you heat it with a hairdryer, and it shrinks a bit. And it sounds weird, but you end up with a slightly flexible plastic pane as well. So there are ways you can do it. It's never going to be quite as good as proper double glazing, and one of the reasons is moisture, because it's possible you've got that air gap, right? And it's possible for condensation to occur in that air gap in between the two panes, and a proper insulated glazed unit, like a proper manufactured double glazed pane of window, it's actually got some desiccant material there to help absorb any moisture that condenses out. So that's something to be aware of if you are going for a retrofit double glaze. But yes, it is possible. And there are also some companies that can come on site and do work as tradespeople to keep the frames. Like if you've got timber frames, they take out the single pane of glass and they put in a double pane of glass, which they've had made up to the right size. So yeah, there's quite a few options around. Yeah. Oh, sorry, there was a second question.
And yeah, the second question is, that's okay. Does window tinting help in winter? What would you say about window tinting in general?
It can, yeah. So there's different types of tints available. Some of them are really just designed for summer. So it's about blocking that direct sunbeams that are hitting the window. They're trying to block that amount of heat coming in. But then there are other type of tints that have a they call it a U value, which is like a insulating effect on the windows, so it can actually help to keep to prevent heat from like conducting through the from the air through the glass. So yeah, they can help. So what you're looking for is the U value, which is it's like an R value, which I mentioned, but it's just the inverse. So for example, if you had a U value of 2, and so you go 1 divided by 2, so that's a half. It's got an R value of a half. So that might give you some gauge there.
Thanks. We're right at 8:30, but if people are happy to stay, we'll plow on. Andrew and I have got nothing better to do than get through all these questions. So very happy to answer as many questions as are asked, but appreciate some people may need to peel away. A couple of hot water system questions. How about lowering the temperature on the hot water system? What's your advice on that?
You have to be a little careful. If you like, so a normal hot water tank is around 60 degrees. That's the water inside the tank is maintained at that level. Now it'll vary. I mean, if you have the whole tribe over and they all just come back from the beach and they all have a shower and you drain your hot water tank, then yeah, it's going to be cold water in there. But yeah, once it's heated up, then it'll generally sit at about 60 degrees. And then once it comes out of the hot water tank and it goes into your home, then it's probably going through a tempering valve that mixes it with some cold water and brings it back to, I think, 50 degrees. So babies, for example, aren't going to get hot water on their skin and get scalded by that. Now, if you have a tank of hot water and you go, oh, I'm going to lower it to 40 degrees, because if 40 degrees would be a normal showering temperature. So you think, yes, I'm being really clever. Because the water in the tank is cooler, then it's not going to lose heat as fast out, and I'll save some energy, which would be true. But you've created a perfect breeding ground for bacteria at 40 degrees. So the Legionella bacteria. So yeah, that's not good. Yeah, there's requirements in the hot water standards that the water tanks they have to heat up to a certain level at a certain like frequency. So you know, they can sit at 60 degrees all day, or they can be heated up to I forget the numbers, but 70 degrees for at least an hour a day or something like that, just to make sure that any of those nasties are killed off.
Okay. Some similar questions about how much clearance is needed for heat pump hot water systems. So this scenario, can a heat pump and a water tank be okay to go along the narrow side of a house? So near the laundry and kitchen, how far away from the fence for the neighbours? So probably partly thinking about a bit of noise, and then of course there needs to be air that's drawn in as well.
Oh, okay. Right. So there's a few factors there. So one is just the width of the water tank itself. So that could be like 40, 50 centimeters, I guess. Some manufacturers have like a couple of different models. One that's like shorter and fatter, and one that's like taller and skinnier. So you can have a look at the specs on their websites, or of the information from whoever's selling you a heat pump, to see how wide that tank is, and get a ruler or a tape measure down the side of your house and see how much space it's going to take up.
And how much clearance would they want from, say, the nearest door or window, or from the neighbours? It's a couple of different questions along those lines.
Yeah. So with the tank, I'm not aware of any requirements that it has to be a certain distance from doors or windows. It was an interesting one with solar batteries, actually. If you're putting in a solar battery, you know, like a Tesla Powerwall or its competitors, there's requirements for how you need to have, like, I think it's 60 centimeters either side of that, from windows, doors, hot water systems, etc. So yeah, you wouldn't be able to, if you're installing a hot water system, you wouldn't be able to put it right next to a battery. Not that many people have batteries yet anyway. But from a noise point of view, then that's not the tank we're talking about. It's the fan unit, that heat pump compressor unit. So that could be on top of the tank, or it could be a separate unit off to the side. And you do have a bit of flexibility, because if we use the Sandon hot water systems, that's the one I've got, so I'm a bit more familiar with it. I think those pipes can be 6 meters long. So that gives you a bit of flexibility. You can have the tank in one place, and then the fan unit can be a bit further away down the house. It can even be up on a wall. If you've got space under, like a big high space under your house or under your deck, you might be able to put it under there, just as long as you've got enough air flow capability. Now distance from your neighbor's, like, bedroom window, I don't think there's any actual, like, distance standards for that. But yeah, you don't want to annoy your neighbors, of course. So it'll depend on the model. So if you've got a really quiet unit, then it's really not an issue. Like with the one we've got, if it's running, like you walk past it and you don't even know whether it's running or not. You have to really stop and listen carefully, and then, oh yes, yeah, it is running. So that's not going to annoy the neighbors. So it's probably more about model selection rather than anything else.
And can a tank go in a roof to replace an existing old tank, or do they always need to be outside on the ground or in a garage on the ground?
I think technically, yes, it could go in a roof, but these heat pump units, they're all tall and skinny, and tanks which are designed to go in a roof are actually short and squat. Like they're probably as wide as they are high, if not more. So trying to put one of these tall, skinny ones in a roof space, that you'd have to be really careful that it's not going to tip over and crash through the ceiling and fall on someone in the room underneath, because we're talking a couple of 100 kilos or a few 100 kilos of water in there, plus the weight of the tank itself. Yeah, you need some specialist advice on that one. More doable would be if you had like a indoor space, like in a laundry or something. It's possible to have one of these have heat pump water tank indoors and have the compressor fan unit outdoors. So yeah, that's another option.
Back into some heating questions. Someone with reverse cycle aircon for heating, but it hardly heats the room she's sitting in, which is a large open area. It's warmer if she sits right next to it, but it dries her eyes out. A contact lens wearer, what can they do? Okay.
A few factors there. One would be sizing. So it may be sized too small for the space. So it's not able to, warm up the whole space. So then to get that warmth, she probably has to find the buttons on the remote that tilt down the fan louvers, so the warm air blows on her, which is effective from a warmth point of view, but then it's drying out her contact lenses. Sizing is one. Another one is probably the draftiness of the room itself. So if you, even if that aircon is maybe, you know, it's powerful enough to heat up the room, but because of all those leaks, the warm air is just vanishing, then that could be the issue. So maybe draft sealing and insulation is the way to go there. Like get that space really insulated well. Yeah, or you could, if it worked for you, you could try some of those personal heating options rather than having that aircon air blowing on you. Was there something I missed in the question again? Oh, that was pretty much
no. I think that's good, and we'll try to get through the remaining ones pretty quickly. But any tips for using two-way heaters, presumably split system, more effectively? So how to get the most out of that heating method? The manual's so hard to work out. So maybe there's a little bit of the spirit of the last question in that. But I guess the question particularly about confusing symbols and manuals and moving into a place and trying to work out how do you actually get the heater working well.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Yeah, sometimes it's pretty clear that the manuals were written by people who English is not their first language. Yeah. Yeah, you can, again, those discussion forums, like the Whirlpool or the My Efficient Electric Home, they're probably good places on the internet to ask other people for tips. Like you'll probably find some people who have the same brand or the same model of aircon. Otherwise, just play around with the remote control, perhaps. Like usually there's usually they're relatively, like, just if you can just get it from cooling mode into heating mode, then that's usually all you need to do. And other than that, it'll just work. And you have like a temperature setting, which is the same one as for your cooling mode. So usually you can get a pretty good performance, yeah, just by switching it over to heating mode.
And a good follow-on question: how often should we clean aircon filters?
Yeah, every year would be the standard recommendation. Just like we should all be changing the batteries in our smoke alarms and checking our fire extinguishers and pulling the levers on our hot water tank, our pressure relief valves, and doing all those 101 other things that, yeah, cleaning our dishwasher filters and our range hood filters. And you know, there are all these things that everyone should be doing, but no one actually does all of them as frequently as they should. but yeah, if you can clean the air conditioner filter, I'd say once a year, that's probably a good frequency. And if you find it's really filthy, then yeah, you might want to go a bit more frequent than that.
Would you have any particular tips for shopping for a new split system? Someone says they're currently running R22 low on gas, at least a 15-year-old unit.
Right. Okay. So low on gas, that's an interesting comment. So that indicates that refrigerant gas that I was talking about, there must be a really tiny leak somewhere, and it's actually lost some of that gas. So it's maybe not performing as effectively as it should, or it did when it was new. And it's currently using R22, which is one of the older style refrigerant gases. Okay, shopping tips. Probably the main ones would be go for a high star rating. Really, that's the main one. There's a database available from the people that do the star rating guides that has all the specs you could ever wish for on all of these air cons. So it's a good way that you can compare features. The air conditioner comparator. So if you can search on that word comparator, you'll probably find it. And I'd be paying more attention to the installer probably than the unit itself, because a good installer, well, you're probably not going to have that issue of the gas slowly leaking out that you seem to have at the moment. And they can often be quite creative about where they put the outdoor unit. So yeah, there are some clever places you can put them around the house, and how they route the pipes through and stuff. So yeah, I'd try and go with like an actual company, like a tradie company whose business is installing air cons, rather than going and buying an air con from some retail outlet, which then just subcontracts installation to whoever.
Changing tack, is there a good family and friends size electric barbecue? Someone would like to get away from using gas bottles altogether. Good
question. I don't know much about barbecues, sorry, especially electric ones. I don't feel qualified to answer that, but
yeah. Probably the My Efficient Electric Home Facebook page, that's sort of our default. There's so much on there. You could probably search by barbecue and someone would have had a chat about that.
Yeah.
And how about the desiccant from biscuit packets, or those desiccants you get in different things? Are they useful to add when installing plastic sheets over windows to reduce condensation? So to your comment earlier that you can still get that moisture.
I would say yes. Yeah, I did. I've actually done that myself. Had a little bag that kind of looks nice, almost looks like a little present kind of, with one of those little ribbons around the top, and had some desiccant bags in there, and I've got that in between the original pane of glass and second pane of glass I had installed. In that case, the distance was quite wide, so it was sort of doable. If they're really close, then yeah, just those small desiccant packets. I would do it, even though it might look a little strange. if the window's kind of visible to guests and things, go, what are those food packets doing in your window? Yeah, it can't hurt, and it may actually help prevent an issue. Yeah.
Great. And old louver windows that can't be replaced, let so much cold in, even though this person hangs a blanket over at night. How to manage that? How to improve it?
Wow. Yeah. So I guess we're talking about the ones where it's glass, but there's actual individual sheets of glass which are great for when you want to open it all up and ventilate, because you can kind of open them up like a Venetian window. But when you want to seal them, they don't. You have all these air gaps coming through.
They never seal. Yeah.
I guess it's a renting situation. I'd be looking to try and put something over that space and then actually seal it. Like maybe you can get some masking tape or something. Like you can put some sheet of something over the window, and then put some, if you can find some tape which isn't going to cause an issue when you tear it off later on. You don't want to be tearing off bits of paint off the window frame or something, but if you can find some way to actually seal up that window, assuming that that the ventilation is not necessary because you've got like a gas unflued heater or something, yeah, I'd try and actually tape it up if possible.
Great. And a very last statement rather than a question. from Tim Palsy, check those aircon filters and make sure they are clean, which is just perfect advice. It's autumn now. It already feels like winter. This is the month for us to make that a priority. So I think we've gotten through everything people wanted to ask. We've gone a bit over time. I just had a final slide if you wanted to flick forward, but wanted to thank you, Andrew, for your time and expertise. I don't think we've managed to throw a question at you that you can't give some sort of useful answer to.
You did the barbecue.
That's true. That's true. In general, well, we suggested they look at it at a useful forum. We'll consider that an answer. So yeah, if you're wanting to stay up to date with other sustainability events that we have on, and you're not already a subscriber, do subscribe to Glenara's Sustainability News, and just the details there of our solar session next month, which will be face-to-face, but we will film it and record it and have it on the website as an asset. So thanks very much for your time.
Thank you, Kelly. It's been great.
Thanks.